to start with an apology, because I have a tendency to speak very, very quickly. And if you're a translator or trying to listen to that, it can be really, really annoying, so I will try and slow down. But the reason I speak very quickly is I'm very, very passionate about regulation, good regulation. Now, that might seem a strange thing to be passionate about, but it's been my life's work for 28 years. I'm really pleased to have the opportunity to come here today and tell you about the work of the Charity Commission for England and Wales. I'm going to use the word charity. The English-Welsh definition of charity is very broad, so it does encompass a lot of organisations that you would maybe consider NGO civil society. First slide, please. Now, the legal framework in the UK is very, very old. The first attempt to draw up a legal code was an Act of Parliament signed by Queen Elizabeth. That's not the current Queen Elizabeth, the first Queen Elizabeth. That date is not an error. It was the Charitable Uses Act 1601 was the first attempt to say what type of organisation should be a charity, what they should do. It also set up some temporary commissioners of charity, inspectors if you like, regulators for want of a better word. These were ad hoc bodies that met occasionally. With the passage of time, it became very clear that there was benefit in having a permanent body that met all the time to help to regulate and also to support charities. And that led eventually to the foundation of my organisation, the Charity Commission, its current format in 1853. Now there's a whole series of Charities Acts that followed on from that. A particular one I want to draw attention to though is the 1960 Act, because that also established a register of charities. Now I'll come back to the register because I think it's terribly, terribly important to what we do and terribly important to good regulation of the sector. We're a small department, 4 offices, 3 in England and 1 in Wales. Next slide, please. My colleague, Ollie Henman from NCBO, yesterday talked a little bit about the size of the UK sector, but it's worth looking at. There's around about 160,000 registered charities with combined annual income of 55 billion and assets of at least 125 billion. Some of their assets you can't value. However, the pattern is a rather strange one in that it's not evenly distributed. There's this very small number of incredibly large international wealthy charities that got most of the funds. And actually the bulk of the sector are small, community-run, community-led bodies, play groups, helping schools, looking after local care. They often don't have staff who are entirely voluntary by trustees. So our task as regulators is to come up with a framework, a system that can cope with millions of pounds and thousands of staff and very little money and no staff. The register's been pretty static. Every year about 5,000 new organisations join and 5,000 leave because they've fulfilled their purposes or wound up or merged. Next slide, please. A very important point about us is that we are an independent civil regulator. Our job is not to promote government policy, it is to uphold the law. It is the law that determines the types of organisations that can be charities, it's the law that sets out expectations, and that is what we are there to uphold. We do have quite significant powers of intervention in charities when things go wrong, either through mistake or because of misuse. But all of our powers are protected. We are not a prosecuting authority. We do not prosecute anyone for anything. But we can freeze bank accounts, we can remove trustees from their office. We have to be accountable. We are accountable to the courts for our decisions. It's the courts we're answerable to, not government. And this model that applies in England and Wales, for historical reasons, is replicated in the rest of the UK. Scotland, OSCR, has about 30,000 charities, almost identical model. Charity Commission Northern Ireland, about 7,000, same model. You step outside of Great Britain, the Republic of Ireland is currently consulting on adopting a similar kind of model as well. So if you look at the British Isles, it tends to be across the piece. Next slide, please. And our basic remit is set out by Parliament, our instructions about what we are supposed to do. And the first of our statutory objectives is about promoting trust and confidence. That by our existence, by making information available about charities, by helping them to run their charities in accordance with the law, by stopping malpractice, that we improve public trust and confidence in charities and the charitable sector. There is a public benefit requirement in England and Wales, and it's our job to police that, look after that, and to promote understanding and knowledge of that. And yes, it's also about legal obligations, making sure charity trustees actually do what they should do and comply with the law. But we've also got to promote effective use of resources, and this is quite important because it's no good drawing up a regulatory regime that is so complicated, so costly, so expensive, that it actually damages the sector. So we have to keep an eye on proportionate regulation, so that charitable resources are used on beneficiaries, not on bureaucracy. So, and that's in statute. And yes, accountability to donors and beneficiaries and to the public, and with accountability comes transparency. Next slide, please. How do we go about doing it? Maintain some public register. Our website contains a public register of charities. You get a lot of information from that about the charity, what's it done, who's doing it, their accounts, their reports, their filing history. It's a major resource. We also provide a lot of specific advice and guidance, primarily focusing on, obviously, aspects of regulation and charity law. We don't tell charities how to run their, trustees how to run their charity. That's your business how to run a charity, not ours, as long as you're doing it within the boundaries that we set. We have a lot of enabling powers if charities need to change their trusts, alter their documents. So we often find ourselves intervening with charities in a very collaborative fashion to help them to develop and expand. Roughly 50% of the work my team deals with in Liverpool is about changes to governing documents. Only 8% is about complaints about that practice. But we do investigate and look into misconduct and mismanagement where it materialises. And it's very important that we act as a hub, if you like, for information about registered charities, and the registry is used to disseminate accounts and return information. Next slide, please. Won't dwell on this one too much because the time is short, we've covered it. Just making the point that we do have powers of intervention, but we can only intervene where we see there is evidence of mismanagement, and the intervention is to protect assets. Next slide, please. Now, this is very important, the annual return accounting system, and I know there's been some discussion around different ways of doing this. In the UK, charities have to produce accounts. They also have to make an annual return to the Charity Commission. But what you have to do depends on your size, on your income. So there are various thresholds. If you're very small, very simple, it's maybe a case of going onto our website. It's all digital, by the way, it's all online. You put in your income, and if it's below a threshold, thank you and goodbye, you fulfill your duties. Above that, we start to ask more and more questions, and the annual return, and indeed the accounting expectation for the larger charities is much, much higher. So the big international charities like Oxfam, for example, have to do an awful lot more. The smaller local community groups do less. But they're all on the same register, and all their information is accessible. And keeping the register up to date is important, and it gives us, the Commission, regular information about the sector we're regulating, but it gives the public, beneficiaries, donors, local authorities, government, whoever, information. Is this the kind of organisation I wish to support? What's it doing? What's its annual return history like? Next slide, please. It's 44 million hits our website gets. Very briefly, the existence of umbrella bodies within the charitable sector is really important. We heard yesterday a UK perspective of how that helps government develop policy, but it helps the regulator regulate as well. We have a number of bodies that specialise in particular types of charity, village halls, play groups, hospices, that kind of thing. Others specialise by activity, finance, fundraising. have two examples. I've been attending this conference over the last 2 days in Charities Aid Foundation in terms of the financial side and NCBO in terms of good governance. And these organisations are a source of good practice that go beyond core regulation. Because if you're running your charity on good practice, there's less chance you're going to stumble into difficulties and perhaps fall foul of those. It also enables us to provide a focus for consultation, the annual return. Which questions should we ask? Well, I could sit in an ivory tower and make some up and send them out to cause mayhem in the sector. Well, no, it's better to consult with bodies to say, what question should we be asking? Is this a sensible thing to ask you to account for? So that we can consult. And they can deliver messages from us too about the changing landscape of compliance. Next slide, please. It's my final points, really. It may have a long history, but it's not fixed. The world is changing. Every day we're faced with new and innovative charitable purposes being presented to us. You know, types of things that were certainly never dreamt of 10 years ago, never mind 400 years ago. So we have to keep up to date. There's talk about new powers for us as well. Types of abuse can change. The ways criminals and others can seek to exploit charity can evolve. And the digital agenda is also significant. It's a great opportunity for us to do things online, to send out all sorts of e-updates and letters and really exploit, but it also provides an avenue for people to exploit charities. So there are opportunities and threats. Simply analysing the huge amount of data that comes in is itself a challenge. And it's a constant struggle for us, particularly with reduced resources, about balancing proactive and reactive work. How much do we spend on trying to go out into the sector and engage and prevent and work, and how much do we wait and when things go wrong intervene? And getting that balance right is difficult. Information sharing with other bodies and other agencies and arms of government as well is also something. So there's an awful lot developing. I hope in sharing that, how we do it, that you find something of interest there. I think this has been a fantastic seminar, truly inspirational listening to all the debate over the last couple of days. I'm really pleased to have the opportunity just to share our way of approaching this. As a final thank you, we've heard Spanish, Portuguese, English over the last 3 days, maybe other languages, but I bet there's one we haven't heard. And as I'm from the Charity Commission from England and Wales, I think I ought to say thank you very much in Welsh as well as in English. So thank you, diolch yn fawr, nos da.